How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. And in today's video, we've got 3 topics to cover, starting out with the fact that there's a brand new SteamOS beta out there, but you can safely skip this one. After that, Valve is continuing to improve their goal of making you spend less money on Steam. And finally, let's talk about why Steam Deck specific patches for games take so long, because a developer came out and said it. I hope you're having a great week playing a ton of video games. I finished Ace Combat 4, excellent experience. I'm rolling right into 5, then 0, then I can't play 6 because it's 360 exclusive. Then I'm going to play 7 and I'll be ready for Ace Combat 8, which is one of my most anticipated games of the year. I'm also playing Gray Zone Warfare. I'm playing Marathon with my friend Dustin. I mean, Pragmata's out this week. I cannot wait to play that. So if you feel like there's not a lot of games out right now, you're crazy. I get it if like they don't support your taste, but I feel like with this many different types of games kind of blowing up right now, there's something for everybody. So let me know what you're playing down in the comments below. But with the intro out of the way, let's get into the first news story here and talk about this latest SteamOS update. So we all know Valve's been killing it with the SteamOS updates. 3.8.1, it's on 2 now, so 3.8.2 regardless adds in so many features no matter what way you're using SteamOS. So if you're someone like me who has a SteamOS PC, I mean, you got the biggest upgrades of all, as in I got the biggest upgrades of all. They completely fixed desktop mode performance. They added in desktop mode features. My surround sound speaker system works even better than it did before. I mean, the list goes on and on of stuff that they added for desktop side use, which is good because that's getting ready for the Steam machine. Then if you're primarily just a Steam Deck gamer, they've got you covered as well with new graphics drivers. If you're using other handhelds like the Legion Go 2 or the ROG Xbox Ally X, they've got an update for you as well that completely fixed SteamOS on those handhelds. So like regardless of where you play on SteamOS, they have been killing it with the updates. But this update that just came out, not necessarily one worth downloading. So if you've got the little bit of a gear in the top part of the screen that's like, hey, you've got an update, you can skip this one because all it does is improve security and performance. That one gave me a little bit of like, whoa, I haven't seen this from SteamOS yet. But usually when you get an update on PlayStation these days, like on the PS5 or the PS4, because they still update it, the line is that it improves security and performance, which you could just safely read as it does nothing. And the cool thing about SteamOS is that when you get an update like that, you could just skip it. You don't have to download it. You don't have to install it. You could still be on the oldest version of SteamOS that was there when your Steam Deck was opened for the first time 4 years ago, and it'll be janky. It'll be rough. It'll have worse performance than it would if you just upgraded your Steam Deck to SteamOS 3.8 through preview or beta, but it'll work. On the PS5, you can't use online. So like not only do they charge you for online with PlayStation Plus, if you don't get the latest software update for your PlayStation 5, they say, sorry, douchebag, you're shit out of luck. You can't use the online services on this console that basically every game for it relies almost entirely on being online. So like even when they put out these kind of whack updates for SteamOS, they say, hey, you don't have to install it. You can just wait. So yeah, I think the reason that the update is smaller is because Valve is on their annual Hawaii trip, which like is crazy that if you work at Valve every year, they take you to Hawaii for a pretty long vacation. And then during that time, nothing crazy really happens, whether it's hardware, game, or software service updates like SteamOS. So I think it's going to be just a few days before they're off their vacation and back at work, but they shipped a great update right before they left. So things are going just fine when it comes to SteamOS. But moving on to the second news story, one thing I really like about modern Valve is how many features they're adding into Steam that are just built to save you money. Like when it comes to bundles, they updated that feature earlier this year where if you already own a game that's a part of a bundle, it'll take account of that and say, hey, this bundle is cheaper because you already own a part of the bundle. So like if you buy the bundle that comes with this extra DLC instead of buying it a la carte, you'll actually save more money than if you bought it a la carte, even if the game is on sale. So that was a really cool update. And on top of that, they're improving it even further because the new feature that they're testing out right now is being able to see the lowest price of a game over the last 30 days. Now, every article I read about this kind of pointed out how easy this would be to game, like right before a Steam sale. You just make sure that for 30 days before it, you don't lower the price of a game at all. So like right before that, it could have been even cheaper than it could be in a Steam sale. I think you're discounting how smart and savvy PC users are, because this isn't a new feature. It's on consoles, like PlayStation has it. I think European Steam has had it for a while, but on top of that, there's plenty of third-party websites that just track the absolute lowest price a game has ever been. So like, if developers want to play that game, I am positive that people will find out that the game was cheaper 31 days before the Steam sale, and then they're making it look like they're discounting it to a higher price, and the developers will pay the price for that in the end versus the user. So I don't know why every media person has a hate boner for Valve lately. It's really weird to me how they just root against them on stuff like this, because in my opinion, having a 30-day low just seems like a really smart and consumer friendly move. Like, that's what we can't have. We can't have the big corporations being consumer friendly. Like, clearly that is what's being said to Valve, because not only do we get these hate articles written all the time, but on top of that, there's all these frivolous lawsuits that are just targeting them for being a private company that's consumer forward. Like, you know, this Counter-Strike lawsuit, the payment processor lawsuits that happened last year that got games removed from Steam. I mean, I could go on all day talking about random and frivolous lawsuits that Valve has had to deal with over the past few years, but they're also really good at winning these lawsuits. So like, it could be a lot worse. I think we got to start worrying if they start losing these lawsuits. And of course, if there's any potential talk about, you know, Gabe stepping down and letting the company go public, but I don't think that's ever going to happen because of just like the insane top-down structure that they have, where everyone is technically equal and you just work on something and try and collect people at Valve to work on a project you want. That's literally how the Steam Deck got made. So I like these consumer-focused updates. I like the idea of saving money, especially during weeks like this when you get Pragmata replaced, Mouse PI for hire. Like, if you're a Steam Deck gamer, you've got a lot of stuff to buy. And in the worst case scenario where Steam is not really providing, you know, good prices that you want to pay, you've got other websites you can look at, like Green Man Gaming. I know they're legit. I don't recommend some other sites that people use, but Green Man Gaming, you can generally save like 10 or 15% off a brand new game as long as you pre-order it through that website, which is dangerous, right? Like, you got to be sure that you really want to play that game, because if you get the discounted price pre-order, you can't return it like you can on Steam. And finally, to round out the video, I've got a really interesting news story here about why Steam Deck specific patches take so long to develop, and it's coming from the developer of No Man's Sky, Hello Games, who honestly, I know No Man's Sky launched in a pretty rough state when it came out. I don't think anyone's ever going to deny that, but the comeback story will never be topped. I mean, not only did they completely fix the game, but ever since they fixed it, it's like every 3 months they release a free massive expansion that completely remakes the way the game works, and for the most part, just cursory glancing at all this stuff, it seems like everything they add just positively impacts the game and hasn't really, you know, messed up anything that people really enjoy doing in the game. And one cool thing about Hello Games is that when they release a patch, they extensively test it on every device the game is available on. So whether it's the Switch 2, the PS5, the Steam Deck, the PC, it doesn't matter. They make sure it'll work well on those systems before they release it. And also, another thing they deserve praise for is releasing patches all at the same time. So if you play No Man's Sky, you're not going to have a situation where people on PC are playing a completely different game to the people who are playing on other devices. And it turns out that the two devices that cause the most problems for No Man's Sky patch development are Steam Deck and Nintendo Switch, because of the memory limit. So like, the Steam Deck has a pretty solid amount of memory. It's like a shared 16 gigabytes. I think the Switch 2 also has around 16 gigabytes, but that just shows how out of control game RAM requirements have gotten. And I thought it was interesting that this story came up right when we got this news story about that Valve Linux developer kind of fixing the way Linux handles RAM management when you're playing a game, where it makes sure that your game stays in VRAM and other processes get punched to the regular RAM. So like, at the same time that that's happening, we're hearing that developing for these systems is kind of a pain in the butt because they don't have a ton of RAM. So the system seems to have solved itself. So ultimately, it's a good thing. I do wish developers didn't drag their feet so much on offering up things like Steam Deck specific presets. I will say it has massively improved over the past year or so in terms of making sure there's a Steam Deck preset at launch. Like a game I mentioned earlier, Mouse PI for hire, when they put out their spec sheet for, like, you know, PC, Xbox, and PS5, they also included the Xbox ROG Allies and the Steam Deck and what settings you should run the game at. So like, you know, that is a positive step in the right direction. But something like finding a graphics preset that's just going to set itself to a relatively good level of settings for someone who's just booting it up and wants to use their Steam Deck as a console. I feel like that's bare minimum, and we clearly don't see enough of that, so I'd like to see more. And you know, I like comparing the Steam Deck to the Switch 2 from time to time, specifically with games like Resident Evil Requiem or now Pragmata, just to see which one has better features than the other, or if one has better frame rate or something like that. But I think the Switch 2 deserves a massive thank you, because there have been so many games that get their Switch 2 port and then the developer looks at the game and they're like, man, the Switch 2 is pretty similar in performance to the Steam Deck. So then they just port over the exact graphic settings and then just call that the Steam Deck preset. A game that really worked well in is Chronos The New Dawn, which, like, despite my issues with Chronos The New Dawn, and there are a lot, I thought it was really cool that not only did they launch with a specific Linux version, but even if you were using the Windows version through Proton, you got a good Steam Deck preset based on the Switch 2 one, and it allowed you to play through the entire game, not only at a locked 30 frames per second, but with a pretty decent, you know, graphical level of fidelity across the board. I criticize Unreal Engine 5 a lot, but one thing that's definitely good about it is when you're at the low preset or even very low, it's still a pretty damn good looking engine. I just don't like how every game kind of looks and feels the same in it, but I don't think Chronos The New Dawn has that problem. It definitely feels like an original sort of like handcrafted thing. It doesn't feel like it's just a game built with Epic Store assets. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And I'm always weary when I hear developers complaining about stuff like this, but it does line up pretty well with what we've heard in the past. So hopefully when Valve gets around to the Steam Deck 2, we see more memory on board. But of course, the RAM crisis will have to clear up before we can even start requesting or hoping for something like that. So I'm happy with the Steam Deck as it is now, and I appreciate the work that Hello Games puts in to making sure every patch not only looks and runs well on the Steam Deck, but also comes out at the same time as every other platform. So yeah, that's about all I've got for the news. You guys wanted updates on my Blender journey. So I'm still kind of in that area where, you know, I want to do my own original stuff, but I want to use this time where I'm addicted to it to actually learn fundamentals. So I've been doing a lot of tutorials. I ended up making this deer. I don't know if I showed it before. I thought this was the next step in my journey through Greg Abbott's tutorials. It's not. It's way more advanced than where I was at, but I got through it. I rigged the deer. I created the platform. I created the little hill he's sitting on. It was really fun. I don't know if anything I want to do right now would need any of those skills, but you know, it was still a really cool process to kind of just jump off the deep end and learn something from scratch like this. And then after that, I learned how to make a low poly guy and rig him. I want to investigate that more, but I need to just do a project that's from scratch from my own mind. So I'm going to try and recreate this picture as like a PS1 little diorama and try to do the lighting and make PS1 tree textures and everything. I know I can make the church. The church will be easy. It's just squares and cubes, and you just stretch and extrude and do all the Blender stuff to make it look like a church. And the texturing part I've got down as well. I'm worried about the environment. I know you can kind of like freeform in Blender, but keeping it low poly makes it a little bit more difficult. It adds in a little bit of triangle work, which I know you're supposed to stay away from. And then making terrain paths, like it's a little bit of a deep end dive for me, but I feel like I'm at that point where I can start doing my own custom stuff. So if you've ever thought about learning 3D modeling, I cannot recommend trying Blender enough. It's free software that works really well. I just downloaded it on my MacBook Pro. I found Greg Abbott's channel. I go through his Blender 5-part tutorial. I'm up and running. And if I can figure it out, I know for a fact you can definitely figure it out, because I tried computer science as my first major in college and I made it about halfway. And then when we started getting into like theoretical math and all this other stuff, I noped the hell out of there. So I guess I have a little bit of a background, but nothing crazy. Like when you're talking about even Photoshop, I lose my mind trying to do the most simple of things in Photoshop. And editing, I have made videos that have deep editing. I just don't like editing. It's definitely my least favorite part of my job. But when I booted up Blender for the first time, I just fell in love with it. So I don't know, maybe I'll start making games or something eventually. Who knows? But I'm having fun with it. So I'm just going to continue down this path. Thanks for all the support and asking me to see what I've been working on. I'll try to provide regular updates. I give myself a couple nights a week so I don't get burnt out. But yeah, I'm going to try to recreate this scene I'm showing you again in Blender, and I'm really excited to dive into it. I just know it's going to take a while, so it might be a minute before you see it. Also, last housekeeping, Viper video is coming. It's finally warming up. My friend Cortland, who I made my Halloween fan film with, has promised to help me make a really cool intro and everything. So we're working on some stuff. So I'm excited to get that out the door. But yeah, that's all I've got going on. Let me know what you're playing down in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel, set your notifications to all. But yeah, guys, as always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.